Good morning, Dana.
Good morning, Elaine.
This is going to be a great episode. I'm pretty excited about it.
What are you excited about?
Well, I'm excited to talk about your book.
Yes, well, I'm excited. I hope I remember everything from my book.
Well, that's the thing. You don't have to remember everything from your book, Dana.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about authorship. When you write something, you have all these words and ideas that you actually have to remember and keep track of. So I thought, before we started this, I hope I remember whatever she's going to ask me. I hope I recall it in the book. But
Well, just to ease your mind, I won't ask you anything that you don't know or understand about your book. I'm not going to test you. What's on page? Just a second.
Yeah.
109.
Line 2.
No, I'm not that kind of a friend.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of a soul sister.
No, that's right. I know you're not.
Dana, I am as a friend, I'm super proud that you wrote a book, finished a book, published a book, self-published a book, sold an entire box of your books.
Oh, a few boxes.
A few boxes. And now you're
thank you.
working on your next book, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So, Dana, how did you get started on the book writing journey to write Soul Prescription, 101 Ways to Find Joy, Meaning, and Fulfillment?
How did I get started on the journey? Well, I would say that I've always thought about being an author. Not a writer per se, but an author. And I think I make the distinction in my mind because it's about creating books. And I think that probably ties into me being a teacher by trade. I'm a teacher at the soul level or at some other level about educating people or helping people in some way. And
But
so
also at an educational level. Don't you have your teaching
Yeah,
degree?
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I have my teaching degree. So my whole life seems to always point me toward teaching. So when I thought of this, I probably thought of being an author really as a kid, but never wrote. I think I had the idea that authorship or the idea of writing a book, it was for somebody else because I wasn't naturally having all these ideas flowing that I could put down on paper, or I wasn't a fictional author, that I couldn't be an author. So it wasn't until I probably sat with this idea for years, and then a few years ago I decided, actually when you and myself and another friend joined our little writing group where we practiced exercises about writing, that I thought, when we are now coming together, it's not that I was writing my book in that group or being held accountable, but it was a place where I could feel validated and say, you know what, I got this much done on my book. And you two would go, yay, that's great. So you had this little encouragement team. And so it made me feel validated as a writer by having a writing group. And I just said, what if I think that was like January of 2015. And I just decided to start writing. And that first month looked like 3 days, and out of those 3 days, it might have been an hour. You sit at the table and you circle the holes on the page, and then you get up and let the dog out, and then you have to sit back down and actually face the blank page. And it wasn't until I started doing that, and it started happening more and more, that I realized, what, I could achieve this goal of becoming an author. And so it really began, 3 years ago, and it also began during a time when my mother was falling ill. And I already knew I wanted to write a book, and years ago I had made a mock-up cover, and I had just made the title 101 Ways to Be Soul, S-O-U-L, Successful. But I didn't really know what that looked like. And I kept that cover floating around my office area for years, and it was like a moving vision board, always following me. And it wasn't until I started writing that things began to come out, and I realized this book is really going to be about helping people to find joy, meaning, and fulfillment. And it might be from my coaching experience too, and just dealing with people and being friends with people, realize people are struggling in ordinary and extraordinary ways. And that I want to write a book that could help them at a soul level. I say it's very practical, but it has a spiritual slant. That we talk about our highest self and our authenticity and where do we find our joy. So my journey began, really it was over a period of time.
But I love that it actually started when you were a child.
Yeah, I would say that I remember thinking that, and I don't know why. And me and the way I speak and think, I think about, was something being planted within me, something was speaking to me then, that I'd have that idea, yet I didn't write. And it was almost like a calling, that someday this was going to happen. whenever I was willing to step into that when I was ready. So I got ready just a few years ago.
One of the things that I ask people when I do work with them sometimes is, what were you doing when you were 12? What did you love when you were 12? And when we go back, which is probably when you were 12, right? Before the world gets at you and takes away your dreams, right? That, back then, your soul's calling was to write and be an author.
Yeah, and it's so surprising because I did not write. I wasn't the kid that was...
You weren't writing. You weren't sitting there.
I wasn't
writing.
practicing doodling writing. Although when you were given English assignments in school, I loved anything that was creative. So if you were challenged to create a jingle for a book report or something like that, I loved that. So there was always this call to words for me. I love the idea of being able to take the least amount of words and have a great impact. I wish I could be a songwriter. I love that idea of the fact that you can move people with words is amazing to me. And I was glad that I was able to be on that journey and hope that people feel moved by some of the things that, have come to me or come through me on these pages.
So why Soul Prescription?
Well, this is an act of trying to come up with a creative title that felt like it most accurately depicted what I was trying to achieve in this book. So, as you know, this is 101 Ways to Be Soul, to find joy, meaning, and fulfillment. That was my original title, Soul Successful, but that's essentially it. And they're bite-sized pieces so that people can easily open it up at any point and apply it. So I saw them as prescriptions. If you read this one, if you apply this to your life, whether it's create a compelling vision for your life or listen to the longing, whatever that prescription was, that maybe that would be the one that could have an impact on you. But there's also space in there for people to create their own soul prescriptions. It's not the idea that you take my word and I'm some guru. I'm not. But these are some of the things that I find that might be helpful. But it's that idea. It's like going to the doctor, we get prescribed something. And we take the medicine and then we're hoping that will fix everything. And it's not just one prescription that's going to fix everything. It's a journey, whether it's with health, and our joy is no different. And so there are many things in there that help people to find their joy, and the different ones will resonate with different people. So it's about constantly taking this prescription, a little dose of joy every day.
I love that. A little dose of joy every day. One of the people that I gifted your book to, so when, as your proud friend and one of your writing magpie group people, when your book launched, I was so proud of you, and so I bought a stack and I gave the books away to people. And one friend that I gave the book to said it was her Bible. Like, she literally, it was dog-eared in a very short time, and she carried it around everywhere. And she said, this is my Bible. And so when I sent you that message, you had said, she's not the first person that said that. So what does, to you, what does that mean when people are doing that?
Well, first off, it's a huge compliment. And, I have other people use that word to me, and I thought, wow, that's amazing. And I take that as that the information is resonating with them. And people have picked up the book and they go, oh, it's just one thing a day. And people have said, that's how I read it. I just leave it by my bedside and one a night. So, because they're not really long, so it's easy to take and digest. And being a coach, at the end of each soul prescription, there's a coaching question. So that person can turn it on themselves and ask, how does this apply to me? And so it means a lot for me that people are getting something from the book. And it feels like I'm on track with my life, with my purpose. I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I should do with my life. And when you're having an impact on people, it feels really good, and it's validation that you're on the right path.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know she's still carrying that book around. Yeah, as other people are. What do you want your readers when they're done? I mean, we talk about this, people carrying it around and it really being something. Did you have an intention when you wrote the book? Like, what do you want to leave your readers with, or what do you want them to do, or how do you want them to feel or be when they're done reading?
Well, I looked at the whole book seriously from the cover. For when someone picks it up, even the color that I chose, it's a watery, mint greeny blue, depending on how you see it. But I wanted people to feel at peace when they picked it up, that this is a book that you will sit with and you're going to feel peaceful. And I want people to be encouraged. That's another piece of feedback that I often have gotten from people, is that they feel encouraged when they read it. So, and the whole idea is that they have practical things that they can walk away with. But I hope that it's fun to be a motivational speaker, to motivate people. But that's just a feeling that lasts for a little while, right? So it's great that you can fire people up and inspire them, but you have to move to action if you really want to create the joy, meaning, and fulfillment in your life that we might be looking for. And so it's not enough just for me to inspire people. I want people to take something away from it. So there's practical stuff in there where all sorts of things, talking from creating that vision, to talking about values, to detaching yourself from your outcome, and helping people apply it to them. And I tell lots of stories of my own self, and just so to demonstrate the points. So, yeah.
And I think that's what I love about the book, is the storytelling, right? For me, the stories resonate. Like, I can really put myself into, or go, yeah, that's happened to me, or somebody I know, and yeah, I get that.
Right. Yeah. You want people to be able to see themselves in the book, and to show up as authentically as I can to help share those stories, because we talked about in our first episode about how we put each other up on pedestals, and we think, oh, this person is doing all this and I'm not really as far along as I think I should be, or whatever. We do all this comparison stuff, and I think that it's about, we're all our own journey, and this book is to help move you along in that journey if you're seeking to figure some things out in your life. And most importantly, if you're trying to figure out joy. I want people to live joyful lives, because I want to live a joyful life, and I wouldn't say that I always had lived a joyful life. If you looked at me, you'd say, well, what do you got to complain about? You have a husband and a great family and house and all the other things that come with that, and all of that is great and good. But there was a piece within me that there was missing. Would I say I was joyful? I wouldn't say that I was 100% of the time, especially in my late 20s and early 30s when I was trying to figure things out. It seemed like it would occur about quarterly, where I'd find a day where I'm lying on the couch crying because I didn't know why. But ultimately I was trying to answer the question, what should I do with my life? And of course that eventually led me on a path where I'm really asking, who should I become in this life? But that's a whole journey. And so the book has served me well, just in sharing my own stories, and then people hopefully can see themselves in those stories.
And I love at the beginning where you said, and it's not just about the book, it's it's the journey that you went to get to the book, right? The cover and sitting there in 2015 and starting to doodle on a page while you're sitting there writing, and it's a journey, right? But it's accepting and the action to make it happen.
Oh, it's all about execution, right? You have to create a book is a lot of work. It's a lot of self-discipline. You sit down, and to not question yourself, because the process of giving birth to it, the closer I got to the finish line, the more the inner critic, my little Roz that lives inside of me, would rise up.
Your inner
and
critic.
You would start thinking, what if this is complete blah that I'm writing? What if this is terrible? What if people hate it? What if? And it starts to scare you from finishing. And you have to be able to push through that. And luckily, I have a mutual friend who was really walking that journey with me, reading it and giving me feedback. And she would tell me, that's not what you're supposed to do right now. You're supposed to return back to the writing board. And so she would just, with that gentle guidance, I'm like, okay, right. I'm just going to go back and keep writing, not to edit and question what I'm doing. And so not only is a journey of giving birth to a physical product, it's battling your own inner battles that we all face anytime we're trying to achieve something great in our lives. We do something good for us, our inner critic rises up, that saboteur, the gremlin, the resistance, whatever you want to call it, will rise up and give you a million reasons why you shouldn't. And so that's most of what you have to do, is battle that inner critic. It's like you're like a warrior princess. You've got your sword and you're battling all the way. But that's the journey. It's don't stop.
And for people listening, what would you say to them about how to battle, or how to push that inner critic aside?
Well, there's a soul prescription in there about the inner
There
critic.
is.
Well, it's at the beginning of the book. I guess it's not even a soul prescription, but to give people a heads up, because throughout the book I talk about your inner critic. So I wanted people to really understand what it was. So it's that idea that there's another voice in our head, not our original self. I don't know where it comes from. Who knows? We're born these beautiful babies, and then somewhere we're given over to parents and the community and life, and we develop these egos, and we spend our entire lives defending things. And the inner critic is that voice that might say you're not good enough, you're too old, you're too young to start, you don't have enough experience, you're not from the right family, you don't have enough money, whatever it is. These pool of thoughts. So here's one of the things that I tell people to do. You have to learn to dial it down. So if you imagine, have a volume and it's at 10, most people's inner critic are blaring like on an amplifying device.
With great big speakers.
You're not good enough. What are you doing? And you have to imagine turning that dial down, to make that voice quiet so you can hear your own original voice. And another thing that I suggest to clients is, instead of always battling the inner critic, because that Roz, man, she does not
tell me about
go
Roz.
away. I'll get to Roz in a second. But the other thing that you can do is develop an inner coach. Because this is about, we're talking about these two voices in our head, right? Highest self and ego. So it's the inner critic and your inner coach, if you develop that. And the one you feed is the one that wins. So spend more time talking yourself up instead of constantly talking yourself down, because you can spend the whole day battling with yourself. But develop an inner coach and name that. So inner coach for me is Rose. Roz is the inner critic. So Rose says you can do it. Rose says you're awesome. You were born to do this. To love yourself. You were doing fine. You were just where you're supposed to be in your life. And Ross says, I don't think so, Dana. I don't know who you think you are, calling yourself a big author. Right? So it's these two voices. And the one that you feed is the one that wins. So develop an inner coach to battle that inner critic.
I love that, Dana. I have never heard that. That is the first time. Thank you. And I've read a lot. And maybe I missed that. I don't have that prescription yet.
Which one that you read? Well, the inner critic's right at the beginning
I know
of the
the
book.
inner critic. I know that. But develop the inner coach.
Yeah. Yes, that is one of the soul prescriptions.
The loving voice. Mm-hmm. The loving voice. And so why did you name the coach Rose?
Well, I didn't always have it named Rose. But as you know, I've had this close group of friends that have walked through, the journey of losing my mother. And so probably in 2011, my mother developed, I guess we say a debilitating disease. We don't even know what it was, but lost her mobility and speech. And it mimics something like ALS or Parkinson's, and we don't know. But eventually she passed away in June of 2017. And I'm sure we'll be talking about some things in the future about the impact of that. But I just realized that's a good name for my inner coach, is the name of my mother. Rose, and it just, I always had Roz as the inner critic, but it was like the two R's, the two sides of me. And so really just think about your inner coach and that loving voice. Stroke that, speak to that, because you will spend the whole day battling your inner critic. It'll just waste your time. Inner critic is a warrior. That girl came to play.
This is where if Oprah was here, what she would do is, I have a cold, so Oprah would that would be one of those
tweet.
That would be one of those, tweet that out, tweet, because that really, Dana, I think I feel like you just gave me a gift today. You gave me a beautiful gift. I won't name mine Rose, but every time I see, I know I have to come up with a name for my inner coach, but
call her forth.
And I need to call her forth.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Woo!
Elaine's crying again.
I am. I'm I'm filling up with tears because we've had many journeys together, and we've seen roses in the strangest places,
Oh
like
my
strange.
gosh, I know.
So Dana and I,
that is a whole thing.
I just need to tell this one story about a rose. So Dana and Joanne and I went to New River Beach. Look it up from wherever you are in the world. New River Beach. It's one of the most beautiful places in the world. It's in New Brunswick, and we are walking down the beach in the it's freezing, and we're all bundled up like little snow women. And we're walking down the beach, and you can see where the snails, they come out of the sand, and they make patterns.
They make patterns. They look like little highways.
And I'm trucking down the beach, and I look down. I'm like, it's a rose, and I went, it's a rose.
It's a rose, and I saw it at the same time. And instantly, when I saw it, it just resonated so deeply. And you know what it reminded me of? The poem, "The Footprints in the Sand," that. Something greater is always walking with you. And after my mom died, that's a whole show on itself of signs. But when I saw that rose on the beach, I knew she was walking with me. And it's that, it's almost saying that inner coach is that thing that's greater than yourself, that's always calling you forth. So it's building the connection with that beautiful inner coach, your authentic self, your highest self. And calling her forth on a daily basis, because you can get out of bed and the inner critic, you look in the mirror, the inner critic starts running its course. So
by calling forth your inner coach, the book that's been percolating inside of you can be birthed. Depending on whatever your creativity is, what you were put here to do, it will give you...
It fans the flames. There's like a little pilot light burning saying, please...
do this.
Please do this.
Bring this to life.
Bring this to life. No matter, and not even what you do. It could be that, but just bring your life to life. Just go toward your joy.
And so not necessarily do this.
That's piece of it.
But be.
Who am I being? Because we're always looking for a joy, and I will say that joy doesn't leave us. We walk away from joy. And because joy is on that spiritual ledger where we have our highest self, and we will willingly walk away with it to knock somebody's teeth out, to pick up a fight and go, Joy, I know you're over here. I'm just going to walk away from you temporarily. Right. And you want to walk back to that, and it's staying with that inner coach. So if people want to do a little exercise, you can literally draw a circle on a page and make a little mind map, draw some lines out from it, and begin writing down the encouraging things that your inner coach would say to you, and put the name of your inner coach in the middle of that circle. And if you need to, then pull it out and refer to it from time to time, because here's the thing, we are beautiful, sophisticated minds, but my gosh, we forget quickly.
We do.
We do. We forget how beautiful and amazing we are. We forget that we are joy, and that we have more power and control over our lives than we think we do. And it's the simplest thing, right? Because when I was trying to figure out what I was to do with my life, I'm looking out to the world going, please give me some answers.
Yeah. And I think everybody's doing that.
And everybody's doing it. But Elaine, isn't the world noisy?
It's so noisy.
It's so noisy. If you ask your friends,
turn your alerts off, please.
The alerts off. But if you ask people, I was like this, basically trying to figure out my life by committee. It's like, what do you think? What do you think I should do? And I would look at my husband and go, well, you've lived with me all these years, shouldn't you know? And I would kind of resent him, because I'm like, you live with me. What do you see? Right. And he would say, oh, you're amazing. You're great at this and you're great at that. But I'm like, yeah, but what should I do with it? Like, what's the job I'm going to get paid for? Right. So, but here's the thing. It's the journey that I had to take, and here's the bigger thing.
Oh, that's so hard, Dana.
It is.
It's hard.
But here's what happened.
Okay.
Here's what happened. On that journey to finding my joy, and I call it finding myself, and it started off with what should I do, but I had to take the journey away from myself, and it's like a boomerang. It actually returned me to me. And all of the answers were already within me. And I'd heard that before. I'm like, yeah, well, where are they?
Right. It's like Dorothy and the damn glass slippers.
Yeah,
click your heels. You already know.
Yeah. Why is that not easy? And it's not. But it's really only when you got quiet and you begin to trust yourself. And here's the key. So that's a soul prescription in there, because I said you have to separate your godly messages from your egoic ones. You cannot know. You have to know the difference. because Plato said that thinking is the pipeline to the soul. So you can imagine this pipelines coming into your mind, and all of these thoughts, good and bad, are coming in, and you
constantly.
have to be like the bouncer at a VIP lounge, where you're going, you out, you in, perfect, you're great. No, you aren't good enough. You're going to have to go to the back of the line and try another night. You have to be able to sort those, and you have to get quiet to do that and recognize which ones are meant for me. And when you feel that deep knowing of which thoughts are meant for you, to trust that, and that's where you begin to build your intuition. You begin to it, and here's another little piece of the pie. So, remember the day you and I were on Joanne's back deck? We are one of our friends, and she introduced us to The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
Oh, The Artist's Way, yes.
The Artist's Way. And as soon as she started reading excerpts from that book, I was like, this is a life coaching book. This is a book for me. And I flew off the step and went directly to Indigo. Do not pass go. Do not go home. Go straight to Indigo. And I just started reading that book, and it just resonated with me, the language that she used.
And that was around the time that you really were diving into writing your book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she suggested in that book were two things. One was the morning pages, and the other is an artist date. And the one that had the greater impact on me were the morning pages. And that is the exercise where she suggests we write 3 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper every single morning. And it's just, as soon as you get up in the morning, you start writing, and it's complete garbage most of the time.
Bob, and sometimes if you can't think of anything, you just write,
keep writing.
Blah, blah,
I go,
blah.
keep writing. But the whole idea is to keep the pen moving. But what began to happen is that ideas for the book began to show up in the page. The name of the book came in the page. I wrote something down by accident. I could see it staring back at me.
Ah.
So what that exercise did, and yet I committed to it. I have books written of these morning pages while I was writing this book. And what it did for me, it really taught me to trust myself. And it developed that relationship with my highest self, because it began to be magical. I'd get up in the morning and run downstairs at 5:30 and can't wait to put pen to paper, because I wanted to see what showed up in the page, because I knew it was meant for me. And you know what? I use God interchangeably with highest self. And I realized one day that I was writing to God. And here's what I found out is when I wrote to God, God wrote back. And I just thought these thoughts were meant for me. And there's a lot of them are garbage, but there's some good things on that page. And morning pages became a place where I carried all my burdens and dreams to those pages. And I got some answers back. And so when I want answers, I realize that is the medium for me, literally, that it's that where it's wiring in the information for me to sit and journal and just see and trust what shows up.
Direct connection.
And that's what it developed for me. It developed a really strong connection to my highest self. And I just wrote about that recently in the book that I'm writing now. And I realized what a connection. I spent years in the Catholic Church as a child, going to church, and God for me was like this old guy in a cloud somewhere, like Santa Claus. I don't know. They preached about this person or thing or whatever, and I was like, I don't know where it is, and but I came to the conclusion, if when I'm going to church and when I was doing that, not the church is bad, but it's just the way I was doing church was not resounding for me. And they gave me the promise of meeting God one day. But when you go inside, you meet God today.
Every day.
You meet God every day. And that's your highest self. That's what it is for me. It's you meet your highest self when you go inside. And that's why some people like meditation, or they like whatever it is for you.
Yes.
You have to find out, how do you connect to your highest self? And I talk about highest self a lot in the book, and I often wonder when people read it, I'm like, do they even understand what I'm talking about? But I talk about it at the beginning. I set it up. But it takes a while to develop that relationship with your highest self, and I think that's part of the journey. And I don't know why it's so hard to find. Because I didn't have it when I was 10 or 20 or 30, or I'm not even sure if I had it at 40.
You did the work. You did the work.
And I was a seeker. I didn't know I was a seeker, but I was trying to figure this out. And not just figure out what I should do with my life. That's what I thought it was, but I was trying to figure out something much bigger than what should I do in this life. And I feel like I found it. And it continues to be a journey. It's not all figured out. But I'm happy in knowing that I have that connection. And not that days aren't hard. Like losing my mom, hard. but my joy remained. You know, I was sad, but there was still joy beneath that. And, you know, I'm just happy that I found my highest self, that there is something inside that I can hear that's, you know, there's something bigger going on here.
Dana, what's next? What's next?
Right now it's book 2. It's Soul Prescription for Women. This one's going to have more of a slant, specifically for women. And it's just like the inner coach we talked about. It's a calling forth of women to rise up. Not to rise up to take over the world. If you want to do that, fill your boots. But to rise up for themselves, to develop that relationship with themselves. Because I wrote in the book, and it appeared, this again appears on the pages. I know, Elaine's crying.
I'm crying.
That,
you know, your
women,
words are touching my soul.
Well, you know, I see women as we are the original channel of life.
Yes.
We are the ultimate mothers. We are the ones that I feel like women are going to transform the world. And the book is really a calling forth of all those beautiful souls that know there's something inside of them, that they have these amazing gifts, and be easy on yourself. You're already fine just as you are.
Yes.
I know there's lots to figure out. I know, I was there.
Yeah.
There's lots to figure out still, and honestly, you know, confusion will come before you'll ever have any clarity. So
It gets messy. It's messy.
And when it's messy,
that means you're doing the work.
You're about to give birth to something amazing. Yeah. So I never knew that. It just felt confusing. It felt like, how am I ever going to get out of this? And I wish someone had told me, oh, you're about to give birth to something amazing. You're going to figure this out. Now, there's not a timeline for that. If you could say, can I figure it out by Tuesday?
Yeah, that's the stuff of life. Wow.
That is. And that's the journey, and we're all on a journey. And for me, I want to take that journey joyfully. As much joy as I can carry.
Joy.
Joy.
Well, Dana, thank you. That was amazing. I know so much more about the behind the scenes of your book. And thank you for the gift of my inner coach. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks
find a name for her.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mwah.